and I'll be your host for the day. The two-day workshop on Autodesk Fusion 360 organized by ISTE GCB will be handled by Nihal Daita, a former mechanical engineer of GC Barton Hill. I do invite him to take over the workshop.
Thank you, Yadu. I hope I'm audible. Hello. Hello, can somebody respond? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so as Yadu was mentioned, I have recently graduated from Government Engineering College Barton, and I'll be handling your session for today. So without further delay, let's get on to the session. Let me just turn on my screen share. I hope you can see this window right here. It's Fusion 360. Yes. Okay. So a little about Fusion 360. As you probably have read the brochure and stuff, it's all about CAD, which is computer-aided design. So it's basically something that enables you to make prototypes before implementing it into a physical design. Okay, that is the base of it. So you have some very common tools right here. So I hope every one of you might have seen some kind of 3D models here or there or on the internet somewhere. You'll definitely be working with a lot of them during your project stuff or maybe during your other competitions and stuff. So definitely this should come in help. Okay. For today's session, basically we'll be handling the 2D to 3D approach, which is the most basic approach when it comes to 3D design. And we'll handle maybe a few 3D tools as well to get the feel of things. And I would recommend everyone try out some of these features at the least. Maybe try to replicate some kind of object at your house or wherever you stay. And maybe try to come up with a similar design. You don't have to be precise about it. You just have to get a feel of the tools. Okay, so as you can see here, this is our browser window. So Fusion 360, as I have put up the link on the group chat. So Fusion 360 is a very cloud-based. So the heavy rendering or the heavy simulation part is all handled by different computers on the cloud. So that alleviates a lot of stress from your own systems, and you just have to deal with the basic interface and stuff, which makes it much more softer on your systems. So even a bit lower end systems can handle this pretty easily, and hence we decided to go with Fusion. So this is just a list of projects. It's just a simple interface. I have created one for this workshop right here. And as you can see, there's a bit of a loading time as it has to sync with the cloud. And we can begin. If you see right here, there's a file and you go to new design and you get this fresh page. So we can start. As you can see here, these are some of the more three-dimensional options. The thing about Fusion is that if you hover over them long enough, you can actually see what they would do. And so it's very easy to come in terms with what these different tools do. So the first step of any 3D design, or at least at this stage, is the 2D sketch part, as you can see on this window. So once I click the create sketch, you can see we have a couple of planes, the XY, the YZ, and the XZ planes. Right. So in Fusion or in almost every CAD design, right, if you want to draw a sketch, basic 2D sketch, you need a single planar surface. So we have some of these initial ones starting, and once we move on to further designs, you can use the faces you have generated as another drawing platform, right? So I'll just choose a random one here. By the way, some things to note are I'll be using very few shortcuts. So if you did miss any step I did, feel free to ask. Okay, I just know that the middle mouse click is what I click and hold to pan the whole screen. Okay, if I shift and hold the middle click, I can orbit the whole thing, which will come in handy when you look at it from different angles. You will definitely have a use for it. And if you see this gimbal piece right here, you click on any of these faces and it aligns it to that angle. Let me just do the isometric, the corner piece. You can go to front, to the right, maybe back to the isometric view, right? I'll just choose a random plane. As I click on a single plane, all the tools in the above section change. All these are two-dimensional sketching tools, right? We've been at the solid tools, which is here. And once you click on the new sketch, it moves this sketching toolbar, right? And as you can see here, there is a particular folder which encompasses all the sketches. So each new sketch you create will be separated, and all these would be shown as a part of the history window, which is to the base of your screen. As I move on, I'll show you how the history works, which is very useful when it comes to rolling back changes or to updating existing features. Okay, so let's start. As you can see here, some of the most commonly used tools are already displayed on the toolbar. And if you click on the drop-down list, you'll get much more options, right? A rectangle, a circle, different types of circles, all that. Arc, polygon, a couple of useful stuff. Today in the session, I probably won't be covering all the tools. Most likely, I just cover the most basic ones, because you can create those complex shapes with the basic tools, or you could easily go for it as well. The ready-made polygon tools, you could go for them. It'll all depend on purpose. So I'd rather you check out these options on your own, so you'll get a better idea of what I'm trying to explain. Okay. So some of the most common ones, as you can expect, line, the circle tool, the spline tool. Spline tool is basically for drawing controlled curves, right? Then we have the mirror tool. So the mirror tool is very extensively used. And along with the mirror, as you can see, it's also here. The pattern tools as well, they're also used very frequently. Pattern is basically repeating the same feature or same sketch n number of times depending upon certain conditions. And we have the project tool, which is very important, but I need extra features to show this. Then the dimension tool. This is very important. Anything that you wish to create, usually it would have predefined dimensions, right? So we use those dimensions to properly get an idea of how the final product should look like. The dimensions are the driving factors. Okay, so I'll just start. Okay, with the line. So most of it is usually click and click approach, right? So if you want to start a line, click somewhere, start the line, you click on another place, and it establishes the line, right? As a part of the line tool, it also continues. And there's a bit of snapping. So like if I were to carefully move it like this, already a 90 or a perpendicular approach is taken by them. I can also move from that. But as you can see, I can immediately change the angle as well. So a thing to note here is that you can see two boxes, right? An angle one and a length one. So if I were to enter a value like, let's say 45, it locks down the length, right? As you can see, it creates an arc, and the angle is the only thing that's changing. If I press tab, it goes to the angle tab, and I can set that as well, right? If I want to go back to the other dimension part, I can just click tab and it alternates between the two. So that's one way to do it. I'm just drawing a freestyle diagram right here. Just any closed diagram would do. Okay, I can remove that. Okay, once you finish a tool, you can click escape to just clear that out, right? I'm just dragging and selecting and deleting. This is a basic thing, right? So I could create a rectangle as easy as this, or I could instead go to this rectangle tool. As you can see, there are a couple of extra options that are popping up on the side here, right? A center rectangle, a 3-point rectangle, and a 2-point rectangle. I'll be using the 2-point rectangle for now. You can check out the other tools later, right? So I just click here, I just drag it, and as you can see, the dimensions change as I drag the mouse, and I just have the select one. Right, so that's a basic thing. So let me show you how the circle tool works. As you can imagine, most of these tools are very simple to use. From this workshop, what I intend to do is show you how I would tackle a particular problem, right? And you can use that basic approach to mold your own different approaches to solving problems. So as you can see, I'm not sure if it's that visible. It's a center diameter circle. This is the default one. You have the 2-point rectangle, 2-point circles and 3-point circles and different kinds of points. We even have tangent circles, which are pretty useful when you come to other works, right? I'll just use a center diameter rectangle for now. So I just do one here, I do one here. These are just random, so bear with me. Right, so I'd say the most common ones you'd be using is the line, the circle, or the center diameter circle and the dimension. Along with the mirrored, it gives a lot of options, right? So I'll just start with these. So now I have established some kind of shape. It's nothing fancy, it's just a basic shape. I just want to get to it, right? Just to show off the dimension tool. As I click on this, right, the cursor changes to a dimension tool. And this stuff is very easy to use and very powerful as well. So if I were to hover over any of these existing features, right, all of them would highlight. And different features would be highlighted in different senses so that you can differentiate among those. For example, if this horizontal line I click in, just raise it, right, you get that 50 mark. I just leave it as enter, and later on if I double click on this, I can change the dimension. I just click outside and it sets it, or enter, and it sets it, right? If I click on this and say it's already 50, so I want it to be 60, I just enter it there, and the rest of the image updates as well. So the most important thing is that if these dimensions, as you can see, right, there is an important feature for the dimensions. For example, wait, let me just show you how. If I click on the circle, right, as you can see, the diameter line is indicated here, and so this actually denotes the diameter, right? So I'll just set it as half of 50, which is 25. I'll just set it there, right? Now, if I were to click on two different objects, right? For example, I have to determine the position of this particular, this particular circle in reference with this rectangular box, right? So I just click on the circle first, right? If you single click on a circle at first, it will usually show the diameter one. But once I click on the side or maybe the top side, it'll change. So as you can see here, it shows the distance between this side and this side. So this enables a lot of adjustments in that way. Like I'll just set it to 25 for the time being. Just want to have it center away between these two, right? And now if I click on this, and now I have set it horizontal distance I have set, now the vertical distance. So either this or this, right? I just take this, I just put it to one side so I can see it better. So I just want it to be half of 60 here. Let's just put it as 30. So as you can see here, this is very centralized one, right? But I had to give all the dimensions by myself. An easier way to do this is to create driving dimensions, right? So that, which means you can use one dimension to drive another. It's basically using expressions like x by 2 or x square or x minus 3 by 8, something along those lines. Let me just clear this part right here so it becomes easier. I don't mind that. I just press escape, just draw a box and deleted the extra bits. Select and delete, select and delete. So only the success, right? By the way, I can also drag these to make it clearer in case anything was contradicting, right? So let's just say I want this rectangle, right? I want every dimension to be driven by this particular 50 or whatever the horizontal width is, right? So what I do is go to the sketch dimension tool. I go to the 60, right? I double click on the 60 and it shows D4 dimension value. All these dimensions are saved in a particular spreadsheet kind of manner, so you can access them later. You can actually call it from here, but an easier way is if I click on this and it shows D4 dimension value, right? Let's say I want it to be twice the length of the horizontal. So I just click on the horizontal length. It transforms it to a function mode, right? D3, and I just click star 2. It means multiplied by 2. So whatever I give here, for example, I'll just show you. If I give it to 40, right? This transforms to 80. If I give it 35, it gives us 70, right? Whatever you enter here will be driving the remaining dimensions as well. Let me just undo a bit. It's Control Z if you didn't know. I'm doing twice, right? So let me set the basic plan here. I want this center sketch I want the circular sketch to be centered always, right? Whatever I do with the width, that should be reflected here. So as I have shown you just now how I set the vertical height, I can use the same principles to adjust this as well. Let's say first the diameter, right? I click the diameter, double click the diameter, so I can edit it, right? I choose the horizontal dimension and I say whatever the horizontal dimension is, I want half of that to be the diameter of this thing. Always. Since it was already 25, you wouldn't see a change. And now let's say the horizontal positioning. I always want this to be half of this. Similarly, I think you can see the 30, right? Earlier the height was 60 and hence I set it as 30. So if I always want it to be halfway in between the vertical height, right? I just double click this, select the vertical height and divide by 2. As you can see, all those dimensions except for this one are driven and they'll be represented by fx as in function, right? You've seen on your calculators. So all these are driven dimensions and this being the driver. So if I was to make any kind of change, so let's say 80, as you can, I hope you can see, I have updated it to 80 and similarly the 2 times horizontal width has been given to the height. The circle diameter has been changed to 40. The circle offset from the side has been changed to 40. I think you can see it. It might be, yeah, it's a bit, it's fine. You can see it now. And the height has been set accordingly. So this is how powerful the dimension tool is. So say you had some reason for making something like this, right? So you just set all the dimensions to be driving. You check it out first. If it does not work, you just update a single element here and everything updates to your comfort. It's a very plain example. In most cases, you won't be able to make all the functions driving. But if you were to implement those driving function or those driven functions, it would make your job a lot easier, right? So that was just an example of how the sketch dimension tool is used. It's pretty useful, as you can see. That what I would do when I am given a project is usually I just sketch out everything or give it a basic shape, right? Then I go to the dimension part rather than fussing on the dimensions earlier on. So this way I can get an somewhat of an idea of what the final product would look like and to check if that's actually possible with the real life dimensions. So I'll just delete all this just because it takes up a lot of screen space. You can try it as well. Now I'll show you something. Okay, the mirror modifier, right? So what the mirror does is, let's say you have something. Okay, let's just. I'll create the square. It's probably a square, right? I'll just draw lines. And by the way, if you can notice, as I drag my mouse along this, there are some clipping points, right? So all these correspond to some kind of commonly used clipping, maybe 1/2 or 1/3, something along those lines. So when it just shows this triangular symbol, right, next to the cursor, it usually means the midpoint. So that is what I want, right? So let's say I'm just trying to find the center point here. That's fine. Just assume this is in the center, or I can use my. Oh, that would be. That's fine. Okay, I'll just use whatever that, or just leave it at that. Let's assume this particular circle is centralized, right? And assume I want to create something like this, right? Just assume all these circles are the same. It doesn't matter, you can give the dimensions later. It's not really important right now. So as you can see, there exists some clear, let's say, mirroring axis on these diagrams, right? So in reality, I didn't have to create the whole thing and create 4 circles, right? I could have just created one section out of this 4 and told the computer to mirror these across certain axes, right? How do I do that? So what I do is I just create one in the side, right? I'll just give it 40 and 40. Ooh. It's supposed to be 40. That's fine. Wait, I just find the center point, I just drag it along. See, as you can see, there are dotted lines showing the center for you. So it makes things easier. I'll just give it, I don't know, 10. Right. So now you have this particular piece. Now in order to mirror it, let's just centralize this a bit. Yeah. If you want to mirror it, right? As you can see here, the mirror option is here. It's usually displayed on the toolbar. I've downloaded this particular version of Fusion quite a while back. So there might be a few changes, but definitely all of those particular tools will be displayed here itself, right? So I'll just choose the option from here if it makes it easier for you guys. So I just choose the mirror, and as you can see, the mirror consists of two options: the objects to be mirrored and the mirror line or the mirror axis. So I know that I have to replicate this whole thing. So I just box selected and all the 10 objects are selected. Another way is I can cancel the selection. I can click on individual pieces, right? This works too. This is fine. Let's say I don't want this piece to be selected because that is my mirror axis. It already exists, right? So I don't need to create it again. So now 4 objects are selected. I guess earlier more objects were selected because I think they choose the corners as individual pieces. So if I were to click the corner, yeah, it adds to it. I don't really need it. It's fine. But either way, it can work. So I just choose the mirror line and I select that and I click this and click OK. And it should create. Yeah. I don't know why there was a bit of lag, maybe stream. But as you can see here, this has exactly replicated to this side. And if I am not wrong, yeah, any changes I make on this original one, right? If I were to maybe, that is not the way. I think usually the mirror is self-adjusting, but yeah, sometimes those problems may occur. It's fine. So it's better you just finalize on your individual section of the drawing first, and then you go to mirror it, right? You just finish it up on this side and just mirror it later on. Now, as you can see, I needed a 4 box one. I just got 2 boxes, so I can use the mirror tool again. Objects, I can select all of these again. Some are not selected. It's fine. I can just select them later on. Select the mirror line, which is this axis, and again, as you can see, anything I change would be reflected. I would guess that this box cannot be changed because it's constrained a lot, as you can see. Constraints are what you would say restrictions, or as in the real world, you cannot do just anything on these things, as it wouldn't look too good or it wouldn't work as you intended, right? So you have to use constraints to lock in the dimensions or lock in the angles. For example, the dimension tool we use first, that is a kind of constraint. It's a length constraint, right? Some of these things are, I am guessing, angular constraints and vertical constraints and mirror constraints. Most of these things are handled by the computer itself. They are pretty intuitive once you start working with them, so you wouldn't have much harder time, right? So this is how the mirror modifier here would be used. I'm just going to delete that. That is how the mirror is used. And let's say, okay, I've covered the point rectangle, the center circle, the fit point spline. By the way, you can feel free to ask questions. I know since you're not working along with me, it might be a bit troublesome to get it all at once. So that's why I suggested working on your own version of Fusion, right? And then ask questions tomorrow, or you can ask questions now itself. It's fine. Feel free to ask. Okay. Another thing is spline. But the spline tool, as you can see, I just drop some points and those determine the curvature, right? Though it does look pretty, I do not think it will be used very freely, right? Okay, maybe you have some constrained spaces where you cannot have solid, sharp blocks, where you would use something like these and just pulling it and dragging it, right? It goes a bit crazy. That's just how it is. That's how splines work. So basically, a spline or the spline in this software, right? What they do is each you can see individual points, right? There are 4 points. I just dragged and I just clicked and dropped them at different points. I just connected it. Each point consists of 2 hands as well. So this As I increase or decrease the length of, I'm pulling and dragging, if you can't understand that. As I pull and extend, right, extend or contract, it determines the influence of that particular point on the final shape. If I pull it further, more of the shape will confine to this arm. If I pull it shorter, it will be much more pointed. So that can be used. It can be rotated as well. It's pretty fun to use, but in most cases you wouldn't use them very freely. You'd use them as more of space fillers or something to fit a very specific curve without proper dimensions. You'll have to play around with it a bit, right? So there's a spline. So that's that. The offset, yeah, the offset tool is very useful. So let's say you have I'm just drawing a random shape. I've already shown you this before. That's why I'm not repeating again. Just showing the circle. I'm just selecting the center point and drawing it. Another very important tool, the offset. As you can see here, the trim tool. You can pretty much guess. It can be used to, if I click and drag, there is this eraser-like icon. What it does is it can remove all those unwanted pieces, so you can get a simple geometry, right? For example, I want the outer shape, which I just highlighted right now. So these inner ones don't really matter to me. So what I would do is go and click on them individually, right? Yeah, you have to be careful about these kind of warnings. Sometimes they won't cause issues. Sometimes they might. But that's the thing. I cannot explain each and every point to you from this workshop alone. It's best to try out these features and see how you can manage certain problems, or you can ask for doubts as well. Okay, if I just undo a bit, there's the whole thing undo. That's fine. Let me just draw it again. The same circle and okay. Another way the trim tool can be used. By the way, the trim tool shortcut is T. So if I click T, it just goes to that. I can click and drag, so it just goes and cuts anything along this path. See, that's the thing as well. Okay, so let me just draw this random shape right here. Okay, I just cut that. Maybe I add a bit of spline. You won't probably have to work with such shapes. I'm just drawing it for the sake of it. And you press enter to finalize the spline, okay? I think I forgot to mention that earlier. Oh, this looks somewhat like a rocket. It does not. It's fine. It's just a random shape. Nothing to be concerned about, right? And I just remove this extra edge. So let's say this was my, oh, sorry. I just have to click on this to edit it again. So let's say this is my initial sketch and I want to offset it a bit, right? So one way is to draw again by taking each angle, replicating the spline, maybe drawing another circle and adjusting, but this is just tiresome. So rather what we can do is, as you can see, these are modify objects, right? Fillet, chamfer, trim. I've already showed you trim. Extend I haven't used as much, but I guess you can use the line tool instead. It's much easier. There's the offset, right? So if you click on offset, it's already above here, sketch curves. So I just select the whole, or I have to click on it, I guess. I cannot box select this one for some reason. I just click this curve and it shows up kind of what do you say, a slider, right? So if I were to move the slider outside or inside, you can exactly understand what is happening right here. The offset position is -18. Let's say I needed a minus. Let's say I just need a -20 or whatever, or 2 centimeter inset, and that does it. So it's a very useful tool. You'll definitely find uses for this because most things are on a flat surface at first. You create often ridges and splines or whatever. So that is the offset tool. I've showed you offset. The fillet tool is basically, as you can see, if you have a sharp edge, right, the fillet tool rounds it off to whatever angle you want. If I just click on this edge and I just click it, then they show a radius. It's a 50 mm radius. I'll just set it as such and click enter. It's fine. See, this is what I mean. In this particular instance, what I'm trying to do is show you different options. So this isn't exactly how you would tackle a problem or you would work on something. That is, you wouldn't throw so many random features at it, right? You'd have a more organized approach. So that's why a lot of errors are popping up, but I guess most of them would be fine. To be honest, they shouldn't influence us as much. I just fill it one more, just for the sake of showing it. Now it has a almost very curved. Don't think you can only fill it the 90 degree. If I am not wrong, I should be able to fill it this one. It's there. It's much more. Yeah, you can see how that's fine. I can just fill it to 100, so you can actually see something. I don't know how clear I can get it, but as you can see, I did round it up a bit. As I said earlier, so every corner piece can be filleted. In real life, when you model something, right, you do not create infinitely sharp edges. That would be troublesome to handle. So you'll definitely fillet a lot, but most probably you'll fillet it in the 3D stage. The 2D stage is fine as well. I just showed you an example. So let's just add a few more features into this, right? These are just circles and squares, whatever. These are just extra features I added, nothing to be concerned about. Those are just some simple tools. As you can see here, there is a circular. Oh, I can show you the circular pattern or rectangle pattern. So that should cover most of the basic sketching tools, right? So I can get a little bit into the 3D stuff as well. So that might be a bit interesting. Let me just also feel free to ask questions. It's all good. I know it might be a lot to take in since you're just seeing me work on it. So it's fine. You can ask me a question or something related as well. It's fine. Okay. So let's say, okay, you can drop points, by the way. So I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it. As you can see here, there's a option called point. As you can imagine, there are points generated at each of these ends, right? Anywhere where two different kinds of lines meet, there will be points automatically generated, right? So you can use those, but let's say, oh, I think we have a point here, which is the center of this particular arc. You have an arc tool as well. I just didn't show you. It's pretty easy. Center point arc. It's basically, it creates the length of the arc you want, rather than creating a circle. You can try it out actually. You don't need me to explain that much. I can place a point here or here. These are just random points. Don't mind me. These points should be able to be moved, right? These are just random points. Yeah, they're not really needed. I just showed you because I might use them later on. So let's say I use this as a reference point, right? I drew a kind of a small circle, maybe. Let's say. Okay. By the way, you need not always use sketch dimensions. It's better to use sketch dimensions, but you can double click on this kind of a. Oh no, that doesn't work. Okay, then sketch dimensions is the way to go. Just click on this and you give it 20. Let's say I want an array or a collection of circular ones arranged about this circular center point, right? So that's where that's where the pattern tool comes in. As you can see, there are two patterns here, which is the rectangular pattern and the circular pattern. So what I mentioned now is circular pattern. You can see from the diagram itself. It's basically, I just choose the object and I choose the center point, right? As you can see, they have already created a few of them. I can actually control these. As you can see, there's a quantity one and a full and an angle one. I can just play around. Maybe let's give it 20. 20 might be a bit too much. Yeah, it's a bit too much. Let's go with 15. And this is a whole angle one, right? Instead, you can do the particular. I think you can understand what is happening. So basically, 15 instances of this particular feature are being repeated up to a certain angle, right? I just leave it at 360 just to make it easier. Or I could have done 180 and just left it there. I'm just doing it. So you can understand what has happened here. A lot of circles, right? A lot of circles have been created and they're all centralized around this point and they have been revolved around this particular point. So that is what a pattern tool does. It creates an array of features centered around a particular point. So as you might have noticed, there was another one called the. Oh, sorry, I exited the sketch. So if anyone were to accidentally finish the sketch, right, and you had more work to do on it, as you can see, the sketches are all in this particular folder. You can just double click on this to start editing it again, right? To be honest, it is a good practice to rename the sketch, right? Let's just say basic sketch. It's not required, but in more lengthier projects, right, you can use it to keep yourself organized, to make corrections easier later on down the road, right? I'm pretty sure these are okay. Now I can actually, that does not reflect. That's fine. Okay, there are a bit too many. That's fine. Just leave it there. So there is another one called rectangular pattern, right? So what it does is, this is a circular pattern. It's very self-explanatory. It basically, yeah, I've said it earlier. So a rectangular pattern, what it does is, let's say, yeah, okay. So I just choose a rectangular pattern. Say I want this particular circle or any other feature, to be honest, to be spread across the X and Y regions, right? Multiple instances. So I just select object, which is a circle. I can choose the directions, right? It's already here, so I'm just using the interactive, what do you call this? Interactive sliders to use it. You can use the distance. All these are very useful. You can use it to accurately space them. Actually, that kind of requires a bit of trial and error, to be honest. I mean, I have used these in projects. You will get to use them in projects as well. You just have to try a bit of, let's say, multiple values to get the correct result. I'm just doing the basic one. So there's also symmetric option, which means it generates to both sides. If I, as you can see, I just increase the count here. I think you should be able to see, once I put it to symmetric, it extends in both directions. I'll just put it to one direction for now. Way too many, maybe 3. And I just fit it inside here. And I press enter. And as you can see, I guess in this particular diagram, I have used almost all of these functions at least once. Okay, maybe except even the sketch dimension I've used. So this is a basic sketch. So the thing to remember is, as I told you earlier, in this particular approach, we go from 2D to 3D, right? So every time you do that 2D to 3D approach, you have to make sure you have to have a closed sketch. What I mean is, a closed sketch, this is a closed sketch, right? It colors the inside. That just makes it easier for you to understand. However, this is not a closed set or a closed profile or a closed curve, right? It's not connected. The ends are not connected. So this cannot be used to create a 3D profile. You need a closed one. Let me just close this up, and it can be used again. So just leave it at that and finish sketch, right? So as I told you earlier, most of the other tools I've shown you are 2D or 2-dimensional. All of them work on a single plane. Now we can use those sketches to make the 3D objects, right? The orbital cameras I've told you, it's middle click and shift. If it's middle click alone, it's pan. If it's shift and middle click together, it's this orbit thing. Let me just home. Yeah, sorry. Or a front view is fine as well. So as you can see, once I finish the drawing, I go back to the solid options, right? Which is the extrude, revolve, hole, rectangular pattern. You'll see a couple of repetitions. It's basically the same thing you did in 2D, but on a 3D plane or a 3D space, right? So the most common one you'll be using is extrude. If you worked on other programs, or if you worked on, I don't know, something like Blender or Maya, something along those lines, you would see, you'll definitely see extrude. It might also be called as pull, also pull or push, something. I've seen some of those options as well. Extrude is the most common option. So if you think about it, right? Let's say paint. If you think about it, a cube is what? This is a cube. I think you can. It's a cuboid, but that's fine. As you can see, this particular cuboid, right? What a cuboid is, it's basically a couple of rectangles, right? Stacked one atop the other. So if I were to replicate this top rectangle along this orange arrow direction multiple times, I should be able to generate a cube or a cuboid, right? So that is the basic idea behind extrude. If I By the way, let me just save this. It's a good practice to save your work. So yeah, usually when you do any kind of work, it's best to save, right? I just click Control S as the save option. I just say sample. I just save it. That's fine. So the amazing thing about this is once you do have a single save, right? You don't have to constantly update it. Since it works on the cloud, even if you do lose power on your laptop or your computer or whatever you're working on, it usually tends to save a very close, let's say, a recovery file, right? At the most, maybe I lose this particular rectangle. So that's a very useful feature of Fusion 360. It's basically more of the cloud interface that facilitates such a feature, but yeah, Fusion 360 has that. So as I mentioned earlier, a cuboid is basically a couple of rectangles stacked one top of the other, right? So let's imagine there is a what is a prism? You know what a prism is, right? It basically is like a prism is a prism. It's fine. So for a prism, what you need is a triangle, and you need to stack triangles on top of one another, right? So let's just take the extrude option, right? The type is extrude. I hope you can see the options here. If you put it on full screen, it should be visible. It's extrude. It's thin. It's fine. You can use extrude, and you have to select the profile. Profile is what I mentioned earlier. The 2D, the closed 2D sketch is what makes a profile, right? So if I were to select this particular profile, let's say I do the prism first. Okay, and there are, as you can see, one side, two side, symmetric. You'll see those X and type distance. I will show that. Let me just select this profile, right? Let me just shift the camera a bit. Now you can see the distance, right? If I were to, can I not? Oh, let me just enter 50. As you can see, it's a little bit, but it's fine. As you can see, as I enter the distance, that's fine. Let me just do it again. The distance is changing here. I can enter it here, or I can just use the interactive thingy, right? So there's this. So that's what determines how far you have to pull something, right? And this taper angle is basically you can. Ooh. Oh, so basically, if you want a pyramid, you can make it. If you want a wider based prism, you get the idea. The taper angle basically determines how off from the center axis you have to go to get your final shape. Let me just keep the taper at 0. By the way, the taper angles are very, very sensitive. So something like 45 would yield very unfavorable results most of the time. So as you can see now, I just did the extrude. I just chose a feature, right? I just pulled it out, and now you see what you get. Similarly, I just undid the whole thing. That's Control Z, the shortcut. Similarly, I can do that for any closed profile. So I just click extrude here. I just click this one. I just pull it out. See, you can pull that out as well. The thing about CAD is that I've drawn multiple sketches here, or a single sketch, but multiple profiles, right? You can actually extrude multiple profiles at the same time. If this profile one is still selected, right? Only a single profile is selected. If I click on this one, you see what I mean? Multiple profiles can be selected. Once you click enter, those two will be generated. Don't worry, the initial sketch is not lost. It's just hidden, right? If you just click view, usually when you work, right, you focus on a single part and you draw the sketch for that particular part. That is why they chose to hide it by default, so it does not interfere with your work, and you don't have to hide it each time. So let's just minimize that for now. As you can see, multiple profiles have been projected at the same time. And okay, now the reason I drew this kind of awkward shape, right, is because I can show much more features on this one, or I can also show it on this one, but still this has way more features. As you can see here, all this has much more than a single closed profile, right? The outer ring is a closed profile, the inner ring is a closed profile, each of the individual circles is a profile, the region between these circles and this inner line is a profile. So as you can see, you can choose multiple points to draw on, right? So let's just click the extrude. let's say I want the part between these, right? None of the circles are selected, just the region outside of the circles. So if I pull it out, you can see exactly what is happening. As you can see, the circles are not taken, only the region surrounding the circles have been considered. However, if I were to select any of these circles, I did something wrong. It's fine. Just extrude again, pull it out, or it's fine. Pull it out again. Now you can see all of these circles have not been selected, and hence they are left as blank, right? If I were to select these circles as well, you can see how they close up. So the only portion that you actually select will be extruded. So if I just click enter, you'll get a clean image. This isn't supposed to be anything. This is a random shape I wanted to show you. Just how the extrude tool works, right? So that is extrude. It's very commonly used. You cannot, I don't think you can actually deal with any design without the extrude tool, right? So something else that's equally impressive or useful is the revolve tool. For example, as I told you earlier, a rectangle or a cuboid is formed by stacking rectangles on top of one another. But imagine something like a cone. Everyone knows what a cone is, right? What is a cone? It's just a assume this is a pretty decent cone. It has a flat surface. It has a flat surface here, and it has a curved surface which goes like this, and it meets at a point, right? So in a cone, you cannot use the let's say extrude approach to create a cone. As I told you earlier, even in the 2D design part, right? I told you to find as many mirror or lines of symmetry as possible to make your work much easier, right? Similarly, in 3D shapes, there are lines of symmetry. Since it's a 3D shape, right? It's a 3D space. There are planes of symmetry. For example, for the cube, right? Or the cuboid, you have this is a plane of symmetry. I don't know how clean you can understand it, but let's just say this. This is a plane of symmetry, right? You have similar ones in all three directions. So you have, I don't know, maybe you'll probably have more than that. You have one of these, one of the vertical ones, and that's it, I guess. Okay, I guess you have two planes of symmetry. Oh, you have another one, something along these lines. It just gets confusing if I draw on this one. So let's just leave it at that, right? So there are different types of symmetry. Extrudes use, I guess, radial, planar symmetry, or the cross-section aspect of it to develop shapes, right? So in the case of revolve, as I've shown you in the case of a cone, right? You know that a cone has a central axis, right? This is the central axis. This is the point where it meets the base. So imagine a triangle, right? A planar triangle. Is this there? Maybe I can mark it a bit cleaner this way. If you were to sweep this this triangle around this particular, let's say, what is this? Around this particular axis, you should be able to generate a cone. So that is what the revolve tool is all about. Okay. So as you can see, this is probably not the. I can work with it. I'm just removing this this triangle to make a better one. It's just a cone has to have a flat surface, right? So it has to be a right angle triangle. Okay. So for this triangle, you can see. Let me just take the revolve option, and it has similar properties like the extrude. You have to select the profile, but here the different thing is you have to select an axis, like we did in the circular pattern one, right? You select the profile, which is this, and you select the axis. I'm choosing this as the axis. I can choose this as the axis. It will create a different shape. I can create this. Choose this as the axis. It will create another different shape. I'll just choose this for now. As you can see, it swept this particular shape across this axis to a 360 degree. If I reduce it, I think you can see it clearer, right? You get the point. So this is around 270 degrees. So if I close it up, let me just 360, and it creates a cone. So similarly, if you want to create a sphere, what would you do? First, you would think you would create a circle and maybe spin it across the central axis, but don't use a circle. Instead, use a semicircle, right? Okay, in this shape, as you can see, there's a sketch and there's a extrude, right? This is the history bar. As I work more and more on a particular shape, right, all of those changes are reflected onto here. So if I were to edit a particular feature at a particular point in the timeline, I just double click on this and I can change it as I want. For this one, I had chosen the axis as this one, right? So if I were to change the axis to this one, see the kind of shape it generates, right? I mean, you get the idea, right? So let's say I were to create some other shape. Let's say, as I told you, a circle, right? As in a sphere. If you were to generate a sphere, the first idea that might pop into your head is create a circle. That's good. Maybe leave a. So the thing is, right? When you choose a line, so this thing is minimized because I minimized it, and it should usually be popped out. So there are different line types. So I can use a construction line to differentiate it from the solid line, right? Just clicking on construction and just clicking the center and just creating this line for the sake of finding an axis, right? So the things you have to refer to mostly have to be in a sketch, or they have to be an edge or some kind of a line existing on a 3D plane. I'll show you that later on. So if I click finish sketch, and if I choose revolve, right, the profile is selected. If I choose the axis, see, it yields an error because the profile crosses the revolve axis. This means that I don't actually need the entire circle to generate this sphere. I just need half of it. So I go to sketch. I just click on this line, right? I think I cannot extend it. No. Okay, that's fine. I just create another line. I just create maybe 2 lines, right? Then I can use the trim tool, which is shortcut is T. I just remove 1/2 of it, and now it makes more sense too. Like earlier, we didn't use a full isosceles triangle. Rather, we used a single right angle triangle, right, to sweep across the entire image. So the similar. Oh, that is a problem as well. I think. Okay, I guess that's something you have to keep in mind. These construction lines, right? They do not serve as closed lines. So if I have to close the profile, I have to draw a separate line. But that's fine. I guess I didn't actually need the construction line. You live and you learn. That's fine. So you choose the profile, right? And you choose the axis. And you choose this particular one. And as you can see, it generates a perfect sphere. You could create a lemon slice out of this, or maybe something. If you have particular angles, that would be best. Or the whole Pac-Man thingy, right? You can do it as well. An entire sphere is possible, 360 and enter. It's a proper sphere, and that is how you use the revolve tool. So I guess the most common tools are the extrude and revolve. There are definitely things like fillet and shell and things like that. But the thing is, if I tell you all of those features at once today, you might get a bit confused. I can explain them, but then again, chances for you to get confused are much higher. Can you just delete the sketch? It's fine, I don't need it. So that wraps up around almost all of the features I want to explain for the day. These are all extra features, as you can see. See, the thing is, I didn't mention all of these, as these are not basically the basic stuff. They come to more advanced features, right? You don't have to use them right away. You can manage a lot with these kinds of things. And I'll show you a couple of, let's say, advanced 3D features tomorrow. So do you have any doubts? Anybody? I think this was a relatively short session. As I told you earlier, if I try to cram all of this knowledge into you right now, it wouldn't cause much of an effect. It's better to practice, maybe try it out on, okay, you can try on Fusion. That would be most ideal. You can also try out on, I don't know, maybe something else that you already have on your computer. Maybe some of you might have AutoCAD. I think it has a few 3D features as well. The basic stuff should be the same. I guess. Anybody? Any questions? Hello, am I still audible? Hello.
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, so any questions? Anybody? It's fine. You can ask something, maybe not exactly fusion, but something else that might involve 3D modeling that you have a doubt with. It's fine. Or we can wrap up this session. Whatever floats your boat. Anybody? Okay, I guess not. So I'd really like it if I'd really recommend it if you guys would practice it on your own computer, right? I have explained. Okay, I'm pretty sure you guys must have. How to get 360 view? Oh, okay. So by 360 view, you meant orbital camera, right? So there are two ways. I think you can. Oh, well, there are 3 ways, I guess. You see this box right here, Bimla, on the top right. If I hello. Okay.
Yes.
So is there another question? I see. Yeah, it's a link. Okay. Okay. So how you do the 3D views? 3 ways. One thing is you can use this top right cube and just click it and drag it, right? I find it a bit inconvenient. It gets a bit messy after a while. So if I let me just center it on the home view. Another option is you can see here there are a couple of options on the base, right? And the first one is orbit. So you can use that as well. It's pretty clean. That's good too. Let me just escape to exit out of it and I just home view. What I would do is you need a mouse for this. You cannot use your trackpad on your laptop if you're using a laptop. So I'm sorry for that. I'm not really sure if they have an alternative. So on a mouse, on a physical mouse, you have to click. You have to press down on the scroll button, right? It's not up or it's not down. It's press into the scroll button. So that gives you the pan view, right? If you hold shift and then you click the middle mouse button, you can do the orbit thing. I usually go for this approach because it's very commonly used around most of the softwares, right? So it just comes to me more naturally. Any other questions? It's fine. You can ask about tools. Some things I haven't quite touched. That's fine too. Anybody? Okay. I guess Yadu, we can conclude this with the session for today. We can see some more tools for tomorrow, I guess.
Okay, like we can do the rest tomorrow. But before you leave, please do fill in the feedback form. Thank you.
Feel free to ask questions. It's all good.